Joining us now, Chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, Democratic Senator Bob Menendez of New Jersey. Michael Steele, Casey Hunt, and Sam Stein are all back with us as well, along with Joe, Willie, and me. It's good to have you, sir.
So, Mr. Chairman, what's your take on the past week?
I think it's been incredibly successful for President Biden. I think he has united our allies in a way that we obviously haven't seen over the last 4 years, invigorated the alliance, helped set the agenda at it, and for NATO to list China as one of the strategic competitions for NATO, I think is an incredible success.
Yeah. So what do you want to see Joe Biden accomplish? What's the takeaway, the so-called deliverable that you want him to get after his meeting with Vladimir Putin? I think everybody has to be happy with what's happened with G7 and NATO, just about everybody, at least. What about with Putin? What's the deliverable?
I want him to speak to Putin the way he knows Putin is. Putin's a killer. He said it. He was right when he said it, and that's what he is. Chemical attacks against his weapons, using in violation of the chemical weapons international law, annexing its neighbors. Listen, we want a stable, predictable relationship, but we have to understand who we're speaking to. We're speaking to someone who uses chemical weapons to assassinate his opponents. We're speaking to someone who tears territories aside from his neighbors, as he did in Crimea. We are speaking about someone who committed war crimes in Syria. And so I think President Biden clearly understands who he's confronting, and he wants to send him a very strong message.
So some are arguing those war crimes are continuing in Syria right now. Hundreds of thousands of Syrians starving to death. Assad is doing that systematically to break them down with the help of Vladimir Putin. How important is that Joe Biden brings up the plight of those Syrians still suffering?
I think it's very important as part of what I think his agenda will be with Putin. I mean, the very first elements about his agenda with Putin is what he's done to the United States. The SolarWinds attack, the ransomware, the continuous challenges to our own national security. This is the new frontier. And if you have a cyber attack that can undermine critical infrastructure in the United States and affect Americans, that would be the equivalent of dropping a bomb on it.
So how do we find common ground? We had to find common ground with the Soviet Union. We, of course, had one SALT treaty after another, START treaties. Where do we find common ground with Vladimir Putin and Russia?
Well, I think the president did it at the early stages, right, when he extended the START treaty. I think that's incredibly important. On the questions of nuclear weapons, everybody's got enough nuclear weapons who already possesses them for mutual self-destruction. We don't need to move further, so that's an area that we can engage in. I think on the question of international terrorism, that's an opportunity to engage in. On the question of global pandemics, that's an opportunity to engage in as well.
Willie's in New York and has a question for you. Willie.
Good morning, Senator Menendez. You mentioned SolarWinds, the ongoing cyber attacks, so many of them, as you know well, based in Russia, though perhaps not state-sponsored, state-tolerated by Vladimir Putin and his regime. You've called for this president to be more assertive. What does it look like to be more assertive? Does that mean pushing back with cyber attacks of our own? What would you like to see here?
Well, he started off with some significant sanctions, but there are more that could be levied. He actually has an opportunity to affect Putin's oligarchs, the wealthy individuals that Putin has amassed, that's also his funnel to money. Go after those people, stop their visas to the United States, get Europe to join in the same effort, freeze their accounts. You'll see how you get Putin's attention. And there is mandatory chemical weapons sanctions under the law that have not been levied yet that need to be levied as well. Those are three very powerful actions.
What's your sense, Senator, of the way Vladimir Putin views this president? We know how he felt. He had great affinity for Donald Trump. He reiterated that in his interview with Keir Simmons. He's made that comment previously as well. How do you think Putin is looking at this president differently than previous administrations?
Well, we know he doesn't have a blank check with Joe Biden. I mean, as recent as just a few days ago, former President Trump said that he had a great meeting with Putin in 2018, that he believed Putin over his own intelligence agencies. He's not going to get anything like that from Joe Biden. He's going to be challenged by Joe Biden. He's going to understand there's a new day and there's a new sheriff in town.
Sam Stein.
We've talked a lot about Russia, but I want to change gears a little bit. You've been a skeptic of the Iran nuclear deal. The administration has not leaned that heavily into renegotiating it, although they do say it's a policy priority to re-enter the JCPOA. First off, what kind of signals are you getting from the administration about their appetite for this? And secondly, can you articulate why we shouldn't re-enter that nuclear deal?
Well, I opposed the JCPOA when it was first negotiated under the Obama administration. I also opposed when President Trump walked away without a plan, without a strategy, without allies. And what we have seen since then is that Iran has ultimately accelerated its sophistication of its centrifuges, which is necessary to create the nuclear material, and its enrichment. So they are closer today than they were. And so the question is, getting them arrested from moving forward? Yes, I understand why the administration wants to do that. But if we don't deal with the other challenges that Iran possesses, for example, its sophisticated ballistic missile development, if you have a ballistic missile that has the capacity of delivering a warhead, and then you add the fissile material to that warhead, you now have a nuclear bomb. And so if we don't deal with the ballistic missile issues, it doesn't matter that you arrest them now, because they have all the knowledge. And once they have that missile and the ability to deliver a weapon, then if they break out, the time for sanctions and all of that to kick in will not be meaningful. So this is the time to use the leverage that we have to get Iran, to get our allies who the president just corralled together and say, look, yes, we want to deal with your nuclear program, but at the same time, you're going to have to deal with the ballistic missile, because that's part of what the ultimate concern is about a nuclear bomb.
We're talking to the chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee, Senator Bob Menendez from New Jersey, and Casey Hunt. Mr. Chairman has the next question.
Mr. Chairman, it's always good to see you. Kamala Harris was in the Northern Triangle region over the course of the past week, looking into the camera, telling people who live down there, don't come to the United States, trying to work on the immigration crisis that we have at the border. How would you grade her trip there and how well she did in doing that? And to what degree do you think changes in the Biden immigration policy, the way they handle undocumented immigrants coming across the border, is leading to this crisis?
Well, I think she gets an A for her work. I was on a call with her after she came back. I also talked to some of my interlocutors in Central America. She sent a very strong message. We want to work with you to change the dynamics in your country, but we also need to deal with the corruption in your country. And that's not an easy conversation to have with heads of state, but she did it, and she did it forcefully, and I think she did it intelligently. In terms of we already had a challenge at the southern border. I think people forget that even though a wall was being built, it didn't stop people from coming. And so at the end of the day, you have to deal with the root causes, which is what her mission is. And I think that that's a longer-term plan. But in the first instance, making sure that we give opportunities for people who have legitimate asylum claims to do it in country is something that had been closed down. This is an opportunity to set that back up. That's part of her priorities.
Mr. Chairman, you have a question? Michael Steele.
Michael, I didn't know it was Mr. Chairman.
Be very careful. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman. Former Chairman, Mr. Chairman.
Chairman, so I want to do a little politics with you. How, in your...
I'm a statesman. I don't do politics.
Just a little politics, not a whole lot.
Okay.
But how do you assess the Democrats' ability in the Senate to actually move President Biden's agenda, whether it's on infrastructure, which we won't go there, Joe, or other big issues right now? Because you've got, I'm thinking of that song from Sound of Music. What do you do with a problem like Maria? What do you do with a problem like, Manchin? How do you see that part being navigated on the Democratic side in the Senate to help this agenda forward for the president?
Well, look, first of all, let's take stock, right? 6 months into an administration and a new majority in the Senate, we passed the American Rescue Plan, significant in terms of getting this country back on its feet, both on the vaccination side, the economic side. We just passed a significant bipartisan bill on China. Part of it came out of my Committee on Foreign Relations with an overwhelming bipartisan vote to meet our singular most significant geostrategic challenge ones in the world, which is China. And we have put through most of the president's nominations. His whole cabinet is in, a whole host of other entities. So I think we are moving forward. Now, there are challenges, and I think that we will meet those challenges. We're working, I'm sitting in a bipartisan group on immigration. I don't know if we can get to where we want to be, but we're working faithfully on it. I know that there's discussions on infrastructure in a bipartisan group. We'll see. But at the end of the day, I know that Democrats have to do one thing. We have to produce for the American people. And they want to see process doesn't mean as much to them as action.
You know, Mr. Chairman, over the past 4 years, we have had a back and forth relationship with China. Donald Trump, obviously, when he was in pursuit of trade deals, would bend over backwards, congratulate President Xi for being so transparent. When things weren't going well, he'd go the other direction. You're chairman, obviously, of one of the most important committees on Capitol Hill as it pertains to China. What is our game plan there? We're going to be sharing the global stage with China for the next 50 years.
You're right.
Whether people like it or not, and whether we like what China's doing or not. So what is our way forward? What do we need to focus on? What is our grand strategy?
Well, I think the legislation that passed is a good blueprint of what that grand strategy is. And you're right, we're going to have to deal with China. It is a rising power and a huge economy. But our strategy has to be two things. We must confront China for its international violations in the South China Sea and what it's doing to Uyghurs and Tibet and to Hong Kong and its threat to Taiwan. But we must also compete with China.